Okay, we're nearly at the top of the hour. Mark, can you confirm that you can hear and see my screen okay?
Hi, yes, I can see your screen and I can hear you.
Great. Okay, thanks. So we'll just give it another minute or so for any last minute stragglers. Okay, so we'll kick off today's session. Remarkably, this is I think the 9th session for this year already, and certainly the last 6 have been done since we've entered these strange times. I hope everybody is safe and well and coping with things as best as they can. We at Bentley, of course, are still open for business, working exactly the same. So if you have any issues or questions, then please don't hesitate to contact the relevant person in Bentley's organisation who you normally deal with. And of course, technical support issues come through to service requests. So as I say, no change as far as Bentley's concerned, and hopefully things are all well with your businesses. So today's session, Thursday the 24th, is we're going to look at item types and asset managers today, which is a little bit different from some of the things we've been focusing on, but it's something we get asked about, enriching your model. So how you can put additional information onto your model. Now, clearly, this is not something that's ever been really available in any of the legacy products, particularly MX, and it's really to sort of future your model, to add additional information to your model, so that in the future maybe you can come back and look at what the intentions were and what was actually put into this particular model. There are other good reasons for using item types and asset manager as well. So the usual introductions. The session is being recorded. You'll get, after the end of the session, give it a couple of hours or so, and you'll get an email with a link to the recording of the session. Any problems with that, then don't hesitate to contact myself or Mark. So as I mentioned, asset types and item types and excuse me, asset manager. So we'll have a look at how to set up item types and expressions, assigning these to particular elements. And Mark's going to look at output and tables, online resources, and of course the date and time of next meeting. The first thing I want to do is sort of slightly apologise that my part of this session is going to be quite a bit of talk and PowerPoint. The thing about item types is that they're actually quite simple to use, but it's actually the setting up and the explanation of what you can actually do with them, which is a little bit more complex. So, as I say, unfortunately, you're going to hear a lot of my voice today and see quite a few slides. Having said that, the session Mark does at the end is how to use them and what the output you can get from item types and asset manager is a little bit more interactive. So Mark's going to be quite hands-on today, and as I say, it's rare for us that we don't show stuff, all of our sessions live, but this one is a bit of an exception. So apologies for the talking and the PowerPoint from me today. So item types. We're here today to have some quick explanations on what item types are. For those of you who've used OpenRose Designer already, you'll be familiar with the information panel that you can get from an item, and you'll notice that in this particular one there is some extra information there, and that's the kind of stuff that you can get from item types. So we're going to look in particular at how you can assign them, what item types are, and how you can assign them to elements in your files. And then Mark's going to have a look at how you can use those by creating tables and reports. So let's get started. If you're not familiar with them, they're an ability to define custom attributes on your elements that enrich your data. So for example, I've got a sign here, and I may want to put some other attributes on it related to pay items, or just maybe about the signpost or the sign panel. Any kind of attributes that you want to put on there to perhaps identify item numbers or assets or specifications, custom properties, calculated values, etc. Now, these items that you put on there, they're not just text items. You have more ability than that. We have what we call a pick list. So you can define a pick list of items to ensure that people are putting in proper data in the proper syntax you need. So you create this in some sort of table, and it only allows people to pick exactly what you want them to pick. Secondly, you can also use what we call a data lookup. So these fields in here, they're sort of kind of grayed out at the moment because they're read-only, and those are being read from a database based on the catalog number that I picked in that first field from the pick list. So it's reached out and it's got those properties and brought them back in. And the third flayout is you can also manually input fields. And the bottom two examples are just, you know, things that I've keyed in fields there. So you could freely really key in anything you want. Now, beyond that basic data input, we can also pull element information from properties from those elements, or pieces of element information, such as length of an element. So in this case, I've just pulled in the length of that barrier that you can see on the drawing next to it, that temporary barrier wall that's shown in there. On these two fields, I've done some computations so that we've computed the length from the design element to be 881.479 meters. And we've determined how many individual segments of that barrier we're going to need using the unit length in that top field, which is keyed in at 6 meters. And we've determined that we need 147 units, and that resulted in a full construction length of 882 meters to 890 meters. If we updated the unit length, so yeah, and equally, you know, if you update the unit length to 10 meters, the number of segments will multiply accordingly. So there's a lot of power behind these item types, and what you can build in here, and we'll go and look at in a minute, look a little bit deeper into what these definitions require. But once you get them in there, what can you do with these? The types of elements, so that you can come back and review them later. Well, there's many reasons why you might want to use them, and Mark's going to look at the output for those later. You've added some additional intelligence or attribution to these elements for others to review, and you can build tables and reports out of them. And as I mentioned, Mark's going to go into that a little bit deeper later on. You can also create annotation for these item types. So any of the data that you put in there, if you want to annotate it, well, you can do that as well. And you can set up display rules to change the way things are displayed on your screen based on the item type as well. And you can also share that downstream through iModels, iHub, digital twins for any other uses, such as construction, design review, or integration with the asset manager, which we're going to have a look at a little bit later. One of the things that Mark and I are sort of planning is to do another session on item types and asset manager. As I say, today is really a setup of showing you what you can achieve with these tools, but we can delve deeper into this probably in a future session. So let's look under the bonnet a little bit and see what's going on here, and talk about how you would set up an item type. This is quite a complex area. Certainly, some of the expressions that we use for calculations, it takes a little bit of thinking about. But we do provide you with lots of useful information to help you through this. So, The item type manager, the first thing you need to do is define the item type manager. So you're going to go to the drawing workflow, see that at the top left-hand corner there, and then to the attach tab, and then in the item types group, and within it, click the item in the lower right-hand corner. You can see I've highlighted it there, and this will bring you up the dialog, which is the item types manager. There we see it there. Now within this dialog, what you're defining are individual libraries that you can organize your data into, and within each library you have item types. Within each of these item types you define properties. You can see there we have our properties. So within my curb, for example, I have a item type. I've got properties set up for descriptions, i.e. the item number, unit design, length, etc., etc. Within each of these properties, there are a series of properties definitions. What type of element is this? So, for example, a number. Is it a text field? Does it have a default value? What kind of units are associated with it? A couple of the more powerful properties that you can define in here are, does it have a pick list associated with it? So we saw a minute ago we'd associated a pick list with our sign on our previous slide. So how would I go about defining one of these pick lists? Let's just skip through this. So this is the way of defining a pick list. So you go to Utilities, pull down menu, and select the Edit the Pick List choice. This is on the item type manager itself, not on the main ribbon. So you'll see there we have the Utilities, and the pull down there is select the Edit Pick List choice. And this brings up a new dialog, and from here, on the left-hand side, you define your pick lists, and on the right-hand side, you define the values within that list. As I mentioned right at the start, there's quite a bit to set up before you start using item types. So our curb list has values in here for concrete curb, granite, stone curb, etc., etc. And once you've got that list designed, you come back to your property definition, pick it from the pick list. There we go, and you're done. That's all you need to do to define it. Now, the other area I want to spend some time on here is a thing called an expression. And expressions really bring a lot of power to item types. These allow you to go out and evaluate something based on expression and return that value. So, for example, here's the expression to return with the design length. What I've got in the middle of this is a kind of nested expression. So this is the expression that returns the actual length of the element. And then embedded inside a bigger expression, that's the rounding value. You can see there, that's the rounding value that's been returned to 2 decimal places. The expressions are one of the most powerful parts of item types, as I mentioned, but those are also one of the areas that are probably the most difficult to set up and figure out what the syntax is for those expressions. You know, for those of you who are familiar with line mode, MX and line mode and input files, you'll have had to learn special syntax for that, and it's the same sort of thing here. So what I want to spend now is a few minutes on here is giving you some examples of what those expressions look like. So there's a series of expressions to get to some of the general microstation properties, like, as you can see here, element description, levels, colors, styles, and line weights. Now, before I move on, I don't want to tell you that I've taken all of these expressions that are in the slide deck, and they are available to you. I've got them in a spreadsheet. So if you want to get the spreadsheet for the majority of the property expressions, and certainly all those ones that you'll see here today, then just drop me an email and I can send you the spreadsheet. That will save some time for you in the future if you're trying to capture these. I think they are all included in the help as well, so you should be able to find them in the help. But as I say, just for ease of use, I've gathered them together, so I can certainly send that to you. Here's the expressions that you need if you're trying to get at the civil feature definitions, the feature definition and the feature name. So that expression, this dot get element brackets brackets dot object settings, are the feature definition, and the same sort of thing for the feature name as well. And you'll see that you get those on the left-hand side in the element information. There's also some for actually getting the lengths of elements. Now this is going to differ a little bit if you're working in microstation environment or if you're working in open site or any of the open civil open products. In microstation there's a couple of properties that will work, so get element length and get element total length. They'll still work in the open civil products, but they're not going to give you quite the same results, and will not always work on civil elements. So if you're working on the civil products, what you really want to use are these two. So it's a linear element length. So obviously you'll realize that between 2D and 3D models there are subtle differences depending on the products that you're using. So we have some of our own civil expressions as well for getting these types of things. Again, if you're working in the civil environment and you want to get at the civil quantities, then we produce from mesh areas. So you'll have access to the top slope, the planar area, the volumes, and these are the volumes that they use here. You notice I've put an asterisk by some of these. Be aware that these are returned in meters, and that doesn't, it doesn't matter what your working units are in your file. They will return meters, and I'll come up. I'll show you. I mean, for most of us in the UK, then that's fine. That's exactly what we want. But there is something that allows you to actually do a transformation of the units as well. What we find that item types is particularly useful for is in drainage, in some of the drainage tools. So there are a heck of a lot of drainage element property expressions, and here are some of those for the nodes. Again, note this is in meters, so it's things like vertical offset, ground elevation, invert elevation, etc., etc. But as I say, we've noticed a particular use for these kind of things in some of the drainage, because there's lots of sort of actual physical things that you might want to measure or add information about, for particularly for those kind of drainage things. And so there's also some of the expressions for drainage links as well, and again note the inverts are in meters. So this is a little tip I wanted to mention for those values that I covered, that I said are returning meters and not working units. Now you may want to do some sort of conversion. So this is a little more complex expression statement in here, where we're going to do an if statement around it and test what working units we're in. So if our file is a master unit of meters, then we're going just to return the result, which is fine. If it's a different master unit, then we're going to do a further test. So we're going to check and see if it's in international feet, and if so, we can take the value being returned and multiply it by the appropriate conversion factor. And if it's not international feet, it might be survey feet. So you get the idea that you can factor in scaling values into these as well. And some more of the drainage property expressions. There's some of the hydraulic information that we have in here now. So you can see examples like materials, diameter, wall thicknesses, some of those hydraulic expressions and parameters that you might need as well. This is just a sample. It's not a complete list. There are, as I say, dozens and dozens, because we see particular value of this for some of the drainage tools here. And if you're looking for something that's not on the list, then let me know, and I can certainly try and find out what the proper syntax is in. Again, I think there might be something in the help about this. And even more examples for flows and velocities and critical and normal depths, etc. And finally, moving on to survey properties within the civil stuff, you'll see for those of you who are using some of the survey tools as well, then there's things that are available there for field books, feature definitions, displays, etc., etc. So these are some of the survey tools as well. As I mentioned previously, certainly for the conversion part, there is also some mathematical expressions that we can use as well, and these apply both to civil products and microstation, and some are just general maths kind of thing: addition, multiplication, rounding, those types of mathematical functions. And again, you know, this is not a complete list, and if you're looking for mathematic functions, then certainly drop us a message, or certainly. And I think again, if you search on system maths, I think the expressions are in the help as well. Okay, so many of these are going to work in these expressions or syntax, so you know they're all fairly obvious. There are some logical expressions as well, and this is things like how to get file names, model names, check if a model's 3D, and these are basic if-then statements. And there are also some basic if-then statements for true and false values as well. There are also some lookup expressions as well, and really this is the last one I want to wrap up on as far as lookup expressions. And we saw this earlier. I showed you earlier in the presentation with the sign where we're going out and pulling in data from another database. So as I say, for our aluminium sign, I want to go out to external database and or spreadsheet or whatever you have, and read down that particular column until I find there's a match wherever it was, aluminium sign that you can see there. And I want and then return the data from there into some of the fields based on that match. Okay, so how do we set this up? So what we're going to do is we're going to define, here's another example. We can return many more fields to the sign panel. So I'm going out and I'm matching, you know, as many as I want really. And I'm going to match a catalog number, and I'm going to I'm returning, instead of just one or two fields, you can certainly return 6, 7, or 8, or however many fields, whatever you need. And these can be coming out of separate spreadsheets. They don't even have to come from the same location. So let's look up how we set up and how we make these work. The first thing you need to do is to define a configuration variable. So there's a config variable that we use. Item type lookup points, and that points to the spreadsheet that is going to contain your lookup data. So you define that pointed out to whatever spreadsheet you have. Then you get the expression lookup get entry, and it's got 4 values in it: bid item lookup, description, item name, and item number in this particular case. So let's take a look. As I say, we're looking at this aluminium sign example here. So if we get to the lookup get entry statements, then I've got at the bottom, I'm going out and I'm looking up the tab called bid item lookup. As we can see there, bid item lookup. That's the property 1, as you can see, property 1, bid item lookup. That's property item 2 is which column I'm going to match. So that's the description. Column 2, and item 3, third thing I'm passing is the property name, so aluminium sign, and then the fourth and final thing I'm returning is the actual unit that I'm going to be using. So as I say, it's all about being logical and thinking through the process and what you actually want to get before you even start using item types. So there's a fair amount of preparation involved. So assigning item types, So really, this is the final portion of my presentation today is assigning item types and how to do it. And we use this attach item button. I'll go through this a little bit live when we get to the end, just to show some of the tools where the tools are available. But there are actually a few different ways you can go about doing this. You can assign them manually in either MicroStation or any of the civil products, and you can see again we're on the same tab we were on a moment ago, where we looked at the item type manager in the bottom right hand corner. But you'll see obviously in the main section there's attach item. From there you would select the item type you want to attach. So for example, I've picked from the pull down, I've picked the curb option, and then simply pick the elements you want to attach it to. Sorry, I haven't particularly used the right color text here, but you can simply select an individual element, or you can use the selection tool for a selection set. So you can put data onto the data onto selection sets, and it would apply it to all of those. Multiple item types can be attached, and property values can be predefined as well. So you can see that in the dialog there that you have. I could have selected the description and some of the other fields and filled them out, and when it attached them to those elements as well, it would have already had that attached. And I could also have applied it blank like I have here, and then gone to each individual element, and in the properties window selected the appropriate definitions for that at that time. So that's how to assign a item type to each individual element or a selection set. Probably the way that we're seeing more and more usage of this is to add them via a feature definition. And really, again, this is a fairly straightforward way of actually working. So you simply pick an element, and you can do this. You can do this in your feature definition library and your DGN lib, and add a item type there, so that when it brings it through to your main display, then the item types are already attached to the feature definition. And as you can see here, once you've done that to an element, when you get element information up, there's more information about the item type, etc., as well. The final way of doing this is really using something called the Asset Manager, and I'm just going to skim through this really because, again, the Asset Manager is something that we really will probably look at in a little bit more more detail further down the line. But the Asset Manager is an extension to item types, so it's spreadsheet-based management. You can do bulk assignment, pick lists, all the things we've talked about. But then there's some other other stuff you can do with grouping, filtering, latitude and longitude coordinates, name boundaries, etc., etc. So there's some additional functionality using the Asset Manager as well. Again, as I say, I'm not going to go through this in a great deal of detail because I think we're going to look in a bit more detail at the Asset Manager a little bit later. We really just wanted to give you a flavour of item types today, but it works through, and with the Asset Manager you can import, you can load a spreadsheet, and it's going to display all of the item types that are available, and you can start picking these through the Asset Manager. So, as I say, I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail about the Asset Manager. I realise we're getting towards half an hour as well, and I want to give Mark a time to do his stuff as well. So, these are some of the things that you can. This is really the Asset Manager table here that we're most interested in, and this allows us to start adding assets to features within inside of our DGN. So as I say, item types here, selection method, reference, geometry and station and offset values, and what the actions you want to do, add, replace or remove. But it's, as I say, it's probably a webinar in its own right. Okay, so I've pretty much finished my section here. I just wanted to show a couple of things just a little bit live. So just to reiterate where some of these tools are. So I'm in OpenRose Designer here, and if we go to drawing, and if we look at item types here, so these are the areas that we've looked at previously, and that I mentioned in the presentation. So if I hit item types, you'll see we get the item type manager, and we can import any libraries that we have from, I think it's from a DGN lib, yeah, from DGN libs or DGNs, and we can go in and we can have a look at the properties associated with this particular stop sign, inspected by, and you can see these are the property definitions that I mentioned earlier on. So that's the item type manager, and as I say, you can click on new item type manager and you can click on new item type, and you can create all of these yourselves as you want. So that's, and as I say, it isn't particularly complex to use, but it just does take a little bit of working out. And here's your expression, your list of expressions. I'm not sure, and this is the expression builder, which you can type in here, and you can test it as you're going along. So there's some useful tools here to be able to build up your item type. Your item types, and the other tools I mentioned previously, attach an item type. Again, as I said, we've picked our stop sign here. It lists all the item types that we have, and we can pick our item type, and then we just use our selection or our selection set, and it will assign that particular item type to the element that we've selected. And there's the import and export dialog box as well, which allows you to import from, I think, from a spreadsheet. Yep, an XLS file. And the final thing I want to show is the asset manager. And if we go back to our OpenRoads modeling tool, and this is the asset manager here, it's on the home tab. I think it's in a couple of other places as well, but the asset manager's here, and you can start building up building up your asset manager and how you want that to work here as well. But as I say, I think we're going to cover the asset manager in more detail at a later stage. And the last thing I wanted to say is that I have, as I say, I have this expression syntax spreadsheet, which I can send to those of you who are interested in it. Okay, I think that's just about me done for today. I'll just finish off the PowerPoint before Mark gets on. So Mark's going to look at what he can do with the data, tables and reports mainly. It's worth bearing in mind that there's a series of online material available both on the Learn server and on Bentley communities. So certainly visit those if you want to know more. And year in infrastructure, it's worth pointing out that that's starting within the next month or so. So please register now. You can find out where details on bentley.com. And as I say, this is an exciting time for us at Bentley. So please register. It's all going to be virtual this year for obvious reasons. But you know, it's definitely worth attending, registering, and attending that. Because of that, there is a webinar blackout during the whole of year in infrastructure, so we won't be holding one in October. The next one is Thursday, the 26th of November, and we're going to be talking about complex geometry. Okay, that's me done now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Mark, it's over to you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. I can't see your screen yet, but I can hear you.
Let me share my screen. Let me know when you can see it.
Not yet, just coming up.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it now.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
Hello everyone. So for my part, we're going to review the different ways you can, let's say, harvest and organize the item types. So with Simon, you saw how you create them, how to attach them to some elements. With me, we're going to see how we can use the reports and tables to organize the information of the item types. Let's start with this example. So we have different signs here. And if we go in the properties of each, we can see that here in the properties, we have item types assigned to these cells. We can find the set of item types here. So it's item types called road sign, and we have the different information. So the catalog number, it's a pick list, and then it goes and find all the different information here, and so on. So in this file, all my cells, so the sign cells, have item types assigned to them. So one of the best way to harvest the information from these item types is to use a report. So the report is something that is available also in MicroStation. So you can use also MicroStation to do it. It's in OpenRoads in many of the Bentley products. You have access to it by going or in the search ribbon here, you can have it reports, or in the drawing analyze reports here at the end. And it comes like this. You have utilities, so you can import other reports from different DGN files. And then here you can create categories and new report definitions here. One thing that is interesting to do from the beginning is to create a report definition in a library, because if I create the report only in this file, the report definition will be only available in this file. So that's a bit a limitation, while you could use a DGNlib and assign it to the work set or the workspace of your project, and you would be able to use this report definition in all your drawings. So let's do it like this. So I'm at the moment in the sign example DGN, and I'm going to go in one library, so the civil sign DGNlib, that is in my standards of my work set. So SR20, that's the name of the work set. And I'm going to go to the standards DGNlibs, which are loaded with all the DGN that I can open. So here I am. Okay, yeah. Sorry, it's frozen. Let me see, there is a message somewhere. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. It was open for a long time, so I think he didn't like it. I will restart it. Okay, let's go back. So here I go to the civil sign DGNlib. And the time to open it. What we're going to do is to define a report in this DGNlib. So like this report definition will be available in every DGN of the work set, as I said. And we go exactly at the same place. So it was analyze, reports. And here we can create a report definition by clicking on here, or going to the category where we want to create it, right click, and new report definition. Let's call it sign webinar. And from here, we need to define some properties here on the right in this panel. The first thing you need to define is under the search location is the location type. Do we want to search for item types in a specific model, or do we want to look for in a specific file or in a path? So if I use the first one, model, I can, of course, look in the active model. I have only one model in this file, so it will not display the other ones, but I would be able to pick a different model or a specific model in another file here. If I go, I can select it here. Then I can also decide to look inside the different references attached to this model and so on. The second option is inside the file. So inside all the models of a specific file, it can be the active file or a specific one. The third option you have is with a path. What is powerful with this path is that you can use a variable. So let's say, for instance, we want to use this variable for the location, and it's a configuration variable. If you want to see it, you can go in the configuration variables here, look for it, msdef. So you have this one, and you can see that at the moment there is only one path in it, but you should be able to edit it and add different paths, meaning that you can look and scan and search for item types in more than one folder. You can have several folders, and all of them will be scanned for the item types if you want. So that's very powerful. For this example, we're going to scan only the file that we saw before, so the sign example. It's not the active file, it's a specific file. So we go in the folder, I select it here. And next option is to define if we want to include the cell contents or not. By cell contents, we mean the line types, levels used in it, and so on. So at the moment, it's not really something I really need, so I can keep it on no. And then the next option that is important is to define which items we want to include in the report. If we go here on the three dots, you got this window, and here the different information you can get in your reports. That's also important to note, to understand that you can, in a report, you can create a report with item types, but also with a lot of different information. So you could also use the DGN elements, file, levels, and so on. So you can really build reports with a lot of information available in your DGN, your folders, a set of drawings. So it's really much more than what I show you today. For today, with our item types, we want to see we want to make a report with the road sign. So that's the set of item types included inside the DGN. So I add it here, and for the moment it's enough. So we say OK, and then we go back in our quantity, in our report definition, and now we need to define which columns we want to add in this report. We go back in the properties, add columns, and I expand the items inside my road sign, and that are all the different item types I have in this. I can select all of them, so I click here, so I want to display all of them. Let's do it. I click on OK. They are added here in the columns, and now I can display have a preview of the results here. So he went to the civil sign example DGN, harvest all the item types. We get here all the informations that are inside the item types, and so that's a good start. But let's say now we want to add some columns. For instance, we know what are the signs, but we need to have the coordinates for them. And in this case, we can use a different property. If I go back in my sign webinar, the item types included in my reports, I would go and add a new related item. So related to these item types, what I want to know, I want to have the information related to the cell which contains these item types. So I go here, I select it, and I got here the information. And if I go back in my columns, I can add a new column about my cell. And here are all the different information available with the cells. In this case, I want the origin of the cell. So like this, I can get the coordinates. It will be displayed here. And let's have a look at what I get. In this case, at the end, I have the origin of the cell containing those item types. Now, I want the coordinates to be separated. I want to be able to distinguish the northing from the easting. What I can do here is add a formatting to this origin. I add it by right-clicking on it. I got those different options, but that's the one I wanted to add is the formatting here. I still want the origin, but in this case, I don't want the select coordinates by default, which are X, Y, Z or X, Y. I just want, let's say, the northing, so it will be Y. And I can rename it here, northing. And for the easting, I can copy it, so copy, paste, it went there. Let's rename it, easting. And I move it down until the end of the columns. And last thing I do is I change it. It won't be Y, it will be X here. Then let's see what looks like my report. Nothing is seen as we want. We are also able to change the unit. So if you are not happy with the units displayed here and you just want the figure, you can also go and define it in the settings here in the format and the general format. But basically, that's the way to create a report. So with your item types, you have the properties here, and then you can also export the results. You could also place a table with this report directly from here. But now what we want to do is to go back in our file, so that's the sign example, and we want to insert a table containing the different item types in a different model. So let's say here, we would like to have this table inserted here. For this, you can use the place table. And let's take the opportunity to review a bit the different options you have with the place table. Basically, you have three ways of creating a table. You can insert an empty table. You can use a file, and then insert it inside your drawing, or from report. That's the one that we want to see at the end. Let's have a look at if we place an empty table. You can go here, you select the text style, angle, you can choose the different rows. So let's say we want 6 rows and 3 columns here. That's simple. You go and you insert it as it would be expected. You have a different settings and options and way to format it that will appear in the ribbon here with the layout. So you can all right click, for instance, I want to merge those 3 and I want to write it to be constructed in it. So I double click, I will have the text editor, and here I can write down what I want to say. Okay, when I'm happy with it, I got it here in my table. I can center it if I want. So that's, let's say, the most basic way to create a table is you can put everything manually. If you have few information, that could be enough. But when you start to have more complex and more information, and you need to keep them updated automatically with a database, that's definitely not a good way to work. So the second way is from file. Let's have a look. As you can see, you have different options, and here what you can say is the first line will be a title row, header row for the second line, and you can also decide to retain the association with the source of the table. So let's have a look, and let's try it. If I go in one database I have. Let's say it will be this one. It's an Excel spreadsheet. I open it. And you will get this window where you can select, if you have different worksheets, you can select which one you want. You can use a manual range of cells. Automatically, it will take the cells with information. I click on OK. And here is something that you need to be careful with. Not careful, but at least know that it happens. You have what we call a table seed. You can use a table seed for the formatting of your tables. So for instance, let's have a look. If I put without seed, table seed, I can go and insert it here. So you see it comes without formatting. You get the information from the spreadsheet, but you will need to format everything as you want. So it can be also a bit time consuming. Or the second option is, I go to the same thing, you can take the same formatting done in your Excel spreadsheet. So if I go here, give it the time to generate the table, I get here the same formatting done in my Excel file. And as we retained the association between the source and the table, let's open, I'm going to open the spreadsheet. I go to the data. Okay, that's the Excel spreadsheet. It's here. And for instance, you can see that there is a mistake here. If I change it there, I want to change also the formatting. So let's put a different color and so on. I save it here and I close. You can either update every one table after the other. So for instance, you should be able, yes, you have the information here. No, here you can remove the link or edit the links in case you want, or you can refresh the tables. So I think it will be, it was in the properties here. You have the possibility to refresh here. Yeah, it's here. Refresh from data source. So one table after the other, you can go and do it. Otherwise, you can use a key in here to refresh all the tables together. So table refresh all, and it will refresh all the tables. Okay, and then you can see, change the color and so on. Now the last way to do it, it's to place a table is with what we're interested in. It's with the report. So if I go in the icon in the middle, you will have access to all the reports created inside the ggn-libs or inside this file. So as we created this, let's say the report in a ggn-lib, we have the one we created here, sign webinar. I can go click on it and go and insert it directly in this file here like this. And then I can change the formatting to make it fit the sheet and so on. So that's the way to do it. And the last thing we are going to see, it's the table seed. Let's have a look to something that is really important when you have, for instance, drainage structures that goes on hundreds of rows. If you insert just one, okay, like we're in the file, so let's start with this one. And let's see an example from an Excel file that we're going to use here, this one. It's going to take more time because it contains hundreds of rows. Okay, I use the worksheet formatted data. I set it here. No, I don't want to take it because it's not important. So it's generating the table. And I can insert it here. So let's use a table seed with no break. That would be the one. So with this basic table seed, we get all the table with all the lines for the drainage structures here. But as you can see, it's not really something you can use in a report, in your drawings. What we would need is to create a break where we need, and to create different tables with the same one. If you select it, you have still the possibility to do it. So here with the break type, so we can create a break type. It will go and break the table in more tables. Takes a bit of time, but don't worry, we do it. Okay, so that's the way it comes, and then you can play on the different heights, how many columns, which rows are repeated on the top, and so on. So that's the kind of information you can adjust after it. Also, you can use directly a table seed that is set properly. So let's say we are going to do it the same way with this one. So with the breaks, the same table. And it comes like this directly. So we can insert them, and they all have the perfect settings that we want. So the right size, the right colors, and so on. And the last thing we want to do is to get the sheet around each of them. So we don't want to do it manually. And in this case, we can use the place name boundary. In this case, if I go here, I use this option, so with the pencil. And in this case, I got already a drawing boundary set for these reports. I go here. I want to create a rectangular array of name boundaries with 1 column, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. And I want to create the drawing at the end. Oops, mistake, 1 and 5 columns. So here you go, and you can insert the sheets from the left center, as you can see. So I can try to center it on the table. If you want to be more precise, of course, you can create a construction point to help you in this. But like, say it's enough, I go here, I click. I got the different options for the create drawings here if I want to change them, but let's suppose they are all good. I click on OK, and automatically it will create the sheet models for our tables. So if I go here, the first one, I can also have the different informations in my sheet border, and so on. So all my tables are displayed like this from this table. That's me finished now. I think we've covered everything. We saw how to create the reports from the item types, how to use the reports in tables, and how to create sheets from these tables. So I can stop sharing.
Perfect, Mark.
You're welcome.
Look at that, almost spot on an hour as well. Fantastic. Okay, I think that's us done for today. So I'm just going to leave this slide there for you to see. Go to the link is yii.bentley.com. So please go ahead, register. There's loads and loads of really good stuff that's going to be shown during Year in Infrastructure. As I say, it's remote, so you should be able to watch as many as you can. It just remains to me to say thanks for attending today. Hope you found this useful. And thanks to Mark for doing the most interesting bit, whereas I got the quite boring talky bit today. So thanks for your time, and keep an eye out for the recording in about an hour's time, and hopefully we'll see you all either at Year in Infrastructure or at the next session at the end of November. Thank you very much.